Not just for cell phone cases and bobbleheads, this 3D printer might save the world. I'm Tanya Hall for ZDNet, and joining me is Samantha Snabes. She is the co-founder and catalyst at Re3D. Welcome, Samantha.
Thank you so much for the invitation today.
Absolutely. Tell us about Re3D.
Sure. So at Re3D, we are relentlessly focused on addressing two of the biggest barriers we see to 3D printing, and that's cost and scale. So with that in mind, we have developed a toilet-sized 3D printer that starts under $10,000. We call it the Gigabot. It's sold in 53 countries. And today, via Kickstarter, we've announced a prototype version of Gigabot that can also accept pelletized plastic as a first step to 3D printing from plastic trash.
Nice. Now, this isn't your first Kickstarter. When did you launch Re3D?
We launched Re3D in 2013. We actually unveiled our prototype version of Gigabot 000 at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, and we launched it on Kickstarter at the Startup Chile booth. Fun fact, we started our company down in South America when it was just an idea in our head, and then unveiled it to the South by Southwest and the Kickstarter community.
And you guys actually worked at NASA, and you had this passion for wanting to do something good. Talk about the transition from working there to basically taking a huge risk on something that you felt passionately about.
Yeah, it's interesting. Our transition has been a gradual one. We were NASA contractors and teammates supporting NASA when we came up with this idea, but it was spawned out of Matthew and I's involvement in Engineers Without Borders, NASA Johnson Space Center. So we had a number of peers, astronauts, scientists, and engineers in the NASA community who also felt very strongly that people should be able to innovate locally. And once we got into Startup Chile, I quit my job, and my teammate Matthew followed 6 months later. When we then launched on Kickstarter, we had this huge success. We hit our goal in 27 hours. And it was a lot of our friends in the NASA community that came over on nights and weekends and helped us fulfill those first few pledges. Beyond that, we were really humbled to have a couple NASA centers, NASA Johnson Space Center and NASA Langley, have Gigabots, and several of the contractors, both on-site and off. So with that in mind, now we service bots at NASA. We do contract printing for NASA, and we hire teammates who still work full-time at NASA and part-time on the weekends, and some who have recently transitioned. So for us, I would say we never really left, and it's just been an honor to go a step further in how we can support space exploration.
What problem were you trying to solve when you launched Re3D?
When we launched Re3D, what we had in mind was a printer, a device that would allow some of the communities that we visited in Africa and in Central America to be able to innovate locally. We just thought, it was really unfortunate that there was such a high dependence on imported goods and a lot of frustration around that, limited access to tools. There was a lot of plastic waste in some of the communities we visited and high unemployment. And we just thought it was inherently right to try and help provide one more tool in the toolkit to someone trying to be empowered in their own community.
Mountains of trash in Mozambique killed recently 17 people, islands of trash floating in the ocean. It's a big problem. So how do 3D printers transform these types of communities?
Yeah, the conversations are very early on, but there's a lot of pioneers in India, throughout Africa and Central and South America, and across Asia who are thinking about how to make this happen. And people are doing it in different ways. There's groups teaching workshops and thinking about how to use discarded electronic equipment, such as computers or 2D copy machines, to make 3D printers that are sustainable. There are groups thinking about how to use plastic waste on the ground, or food waste even, or ocean waste, and to use that as a feedstock. And then there are people thinking about how you create objects that could improve a community, supplies for a school or a clinic, or just that widget you need so you don't have to source it at cost from so far away.
What makes the Gigabot different than maybe some of the other 3D printers that are out there?
Yeah, so Gigabot is our flagship technology and our way to try and make the world's most affordable large-scale industrial 3D printer. The starting size of Gigabot is 30 times bigger than your average desktop printer, and it's about a tenth of the cost of an equivalent industrial system. We also offer full services around that for people just getting started or looking to contract print, and we sell it at just under $9,000. So that's what makes Gigabot unique. Gigabot X, the printer we just put on Kickstarter this morning, is the prototype modified version of Gigabot that can accept plastic pellets. So right now, in our style of 3D printing, fused filament fabrication or FDM printing, the printer moves in 3 directions. It's like a glorified hot glue gun, and it accepts an input material called filament. It looks like coiled rope. Well, a lot of that filament comes from pellets. So basically what you're doing is you're paying a middleman to extrude that plastic out. Unfortunately, once extruded, the filament materials often desiccate or they can dry out over time. And you're really contingent on an extrusion line that produces that material you want to print with. So by designing a modified version of Gigabot that can just take those pellets directly, we believe we're going to expand access to materials. And by removing the need for extrusion, the cost is, a tenth or a 20th of what it would be if extruded. So now it's cheaper. It's more accessible, and you have the ability to take pellets and mix them together. So I could pour in different kinds of pellets to come up with maybe even new and unique materials I couldn't otherwise work with. And as we think about working with trash, that might be important as you have to maybe re-add in some chemicals to make a substrate usable.
This is a huge undertaking. So I guess what would be the biggest barriers or obstacles that you've faced so far?
Everything we do is hard. We talk a lot about printing from garbage and why it's ridiculous and why it took us, which is, I think our team is brilliant. Matthew and the engineers and our ops team have a ton of life and professional experience to really push the frontiers, we think, of 3D printing. But one thing we don't talk about a lot is, how do you stand up customer support if you've never run a manufacturing company? And what does instruction manuals look like when you're servicing literally the entire world? We weren't prepared for that, and we got a lot of feedback in the beginning that helped get us to where we are now. We're also learning a lot about, quality control and how you have push-pull systems for ordering. We're balancing over 1,000 parts and hundreds of thousands of dollars in inventory and hedging to avoid, supply chain constraints ourselves. We're learning how to write protocols for our tooling to better onboard. And most importantly, we're learning how to serve our team. I think so often we look out at the next thing we have to do, either in the technology innovation or just bootstrapping a factory, trying to start a blog on the Medium to capture our lessons learned. So hopefully people can avoid our pitfalls. But along the way, I think more than once we've forgotten just to honor our teammates and to support the people that give so much. So we're learning how to be better managers, better colleagues, and still learning a lot about healthcare and HR and just all the nuts and bolts around having a business. Export compliance is another big rock for us we have to tackle.
So how many have you sold so far? I mean, I know that the Gigabot X just launched, but on Kickstarter. But as far as the Gigabots and as far as how many you sold, were they even to the people that you predicted, or have there's been, or is that varied?
That's what's so interesting. So Gigabot's now in over 50 countries around the world. It's sold in a few flavors. There's the regular Gigabot that we had launched, the standard Gigabot, we call it, on Kickstarter in 2013, and we've now evolved 3.5 generations later. We also make custom systems. So we have, because we have our research arm and the capability now with our factory in Houston, they'll hire us to make a specific version of Gigabot, much as very reminiscent of what we did with the pellet printer. And that demand is growing as well. Additionally, we had customers that were just buying Gigabot in the beginning, but we're learning not everyone has the means or the interest in running a big 3D printer in their facility. They would prefer just to hire us to do contract prints. So we now have several thousand customers who just ask us to do prints on demand. So that's been really cool, and it's gotten us into new markets and helped us serve more groups. But aside from that, it's been really interesting. We thought when we launched Gigabot that we were making something that our friends in Rwanda might need. And what we found is the appetites here in the first world as well, or in North America. Our biggest market is Los Angeles. And a growing percentage of our customers are, federal agencies. The Department of State has a gigabot, the FAA has a gigabot, as well as, these NASA centers, as well as enterprise customers. So Fortune 100 companies who are thinking about how they can not just prototype faster, but potentially make parts on demand that are functional using farms of printers.
Wow. So I guess, are you looking for partners or advisors, or do you want that kind of assistance?
Yeah, we're super honored right now. We're participating in a program called Parallel 18 that's helping us scale back into Latin America and Puerto Rico and work with manufacturing companies there. If you're on the island, we really want to talk to you. We have a gigabot there and a number of use cases we'd like to demonstrate. But beyond that, we're looking for assistance in multiple domains. We are hiring post-winning the Global Creator Award. And strategically, we're looking for access to trash. So we're looking to groups that can get us their waste that's been pelletized for our prototyping efforts. We think it's really imperative that as we invest the limited resources we have in a bootstrap company to try and do this project we think is inherently right, that it's guided by feedback in the community. So we're tackling the most pressing problems first. And we know manufacturing companies in particular have a lot of, say, packaging waste that ends up going into landfills. We think a lot about trash at the end of the line, that waste pickers are dealing with in the ocean, but it's all coming from somewhere. So we really want to work with large organizations that are ready to take that first step and pilot opportunities to look like how we can utilize waste so it doesn't get into the oceans. We are not material scientists, and we have a lot to learn in that domain. We know it. So if you're a material scientist listening today, we'd love to have a conversation with you about where you think we can go forward together. And as we expand our research capability, we're always open to teaming on a grant that might help make that a reality.
Exciting. You know what? I think what you're doing is really great. And I love to help give you some support and forward people to your Kickstarter to
Thank you.
See to the next level. If somebody wants to follow you, Samantha, maybe connect with you, maybe they want to get hired, or maybe they just want to support your Kickstarter, how can they do that?
Sure. So you can do it in a couple of ways. If you go to our website, that's re3d.org, there should be a banner scrolling right now at the top of our page. That'll take you directly to our Kickstarter page. We also have a blog at re3d.org/news that can redirect you and point you to where, if you're at South by Southwest right now, we'd love to see you where you can see a live demo. Additionally, if on our website, you can find a link to our careers tab at the bottom of the page, or you can just go directly to re3d.org/careers.
Love it. Thanks again, Samantha, for your time. Enjoy South by Southwest, and hopefully people will enjoy your presentation. Certainly, you can follow me as well. You can follow me here at ZDNet or Tech Republic, or maybe find me on Twitter. I love to tweet and answer questions. I'm at Tanya Hall Radio on Twitter, or find me on Facebook by searching for The Tanya Hall Show. Until next time.